Afternoon. It's working great. Thank you for everyone for being here. My name is Waldrep. RETCON, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I am supposed to talk about the future of asset management and integrations, we'll cover that. We will get there. To start, just to set everyone's expectations, I have, prior to Dottid, no tech experience, no real estate experience, and no business experience. So take everything I say with basically a huge, massive grain of salt. But that's really to start. I want to give you a deeper background on Dottid and why Dottid exists so that we can then ultimately get to the current day and the future. So Dottid started about 5 years ago. I was going to be a leasing agent at Colliers, and in Dallas, Texas, I just graduated college. And was going to be a leasing agent, lease downtown office buildings, and decided that there really wasn't a platform and market that looked like Asana, Trello, Monday.com at the time, and that there was an opportunity to really go build workflow technology that didn't just engage asset managers and brokers, but engaged teams of people. So think owners, project coordinators, property managers, construction managers, obviously asset management, obviously leasing, but really there was not a platform and market that was engaging all of these groups of people and ultimately groups of users. And so yeah, I turned down the job offer at Colliers and I got started on what is now Dottid. What's fun is that at this point, Dottid has now raised about $15 million. We're in market nationally, and it's been a really great ride. But really what we set out to do from a workflow perspective was ultimately drive a lot of different types of people and different user personas to the same platform. So what were we trying to accomplish? We were trying to accomplish getting tenants from inquiry to executed lease to move-in as quickly as humanly possible. Ultimately helping out asset management teams, brokerage teams, and owners generate revenue, get people in their buildings, and ultimately get that tenant experience going as quickly as possible. Part of the emphasis here on why I segmented out kind of inquiry to lease sign to move in is because Dottid actually does not stop when the lease is signed. So many of our customers have actually engaged property management and construction management, project coordinators, and other personas inside their organization and or outsourced on our platform to make sure that that tenant experience actually gets going. It's one thing to get a lease signed. I don't know if we have any former brokers in the room, but it's one thing to get a lease signed. It's another thing to actually get a tenant in and paying. Those are two vastly different things and actually require two totally different processes with totally different groups of people. And so Dottid was really specially built to manage the holistic part of the transaction timeline, not just from this kind of inquiry to getting a lease signed, great, we can move on, done and dusted, and then we get to go on to the next deal. Dottid was meant to really build a platform that engaged all of these parties. And so that's some of the brief history of Dottid. Think of Dottid as the Asana Trello, as I said earlier, for commercial leasing. So what's now? Well, currently, we have started our kind of open-handed outreach to market. One of the announcements we made about 2 months ago is that we'll be the first asset management platform in PropTech that will ultimately streamline asset management and valuation into basically one symmetrical path. We announced a partnership with Altus in October. We are part of their partnership program, and that partnership will allow and enable not just ownership, leasing agents, asset managers, but ultimately other personas as well, to see great information on the value of assets in Dottid and ultimately information going back to Argus. This partnership is really groundbreaking, and this is really where I think the future of this industry is going. If I'm an owner of real estate, whether I own office, industrial, retail, I've got a lot of point problems, and currently I have a lot of point solutions. I don't have a lot of things that are solving across the board what I need to solve for. And so Dottid's partnership with Argus is one of those steps to make sure that we tie in, great, not just leasing and asset management, but ultimately how does valuation and how does acquisition and disposition inside of my own business process affect leasing and asset management? Currently, that process is incredibly manual. If you talk to any analyst who's on an owner team, they're going in and they're entering lease data, deal data, inquiry data, all manually, typically from spreadsheets or taking exports of certain platforms, and it's all going manually into Argus. Now, what that requires is Argus also has to be coming up to speed in terms of efficiency as well, and they are doing the same thing. So we're really excited about this partnership that we have announced about 2 months ago, and we will roll that out to market April, May of next year. So that's really kind of the beginning of the future, but where does it go from here? is really ultimately what we're here to talk about, and why. I think this market in technology and in PropTech is really categorized by a lot of people trying to solve a lot of different problems that aren't talking to each other. Why doesn't building operations talk to tenant experience, which talks to asset management, which talks to valuation? Why? Why doesn't that happen? Why are there not more partnerships that engage like an Equium or an HQO or a Building Engines, which is now part of JLL Technologies, or an Angus with an Argus? Like, that's really the future of this space. The future is data flowing from disparate sources that are connecting and ultimately creating new data, new insights for the owners themselves. Because that new data actually becomes really prescriptive about the business problems that they have to solve. It's not just good enough to think about like, oh, I've got asset management data over here in this silo, and then I've actually got some of my leasing broker data over here in this silo, and I've got a CRM, and then I've got Yardi or MRI over on the accounting side, and it just like exists. The new way to think about how this industry should work is all those things should talk to one another. And so Dottid is really trying to pioneer some of that. I know obviously some of that's also happening in the space with other partners as well. But as we look to go into 2022, we will look to engage our partnerships at a deeper level that actually solve exactly what I just talked about. Why doesn't tenant experience talk to asset management, which talks to building operations? That's something we want to go solve. And then why doesn't that then talk to valuation and actually look at how you value a building? These types of integrations should really be telling us more about how to make better business decisions around asset management and leasing, and ultimately when I should do a disposition. Because you should have greater information around not just tenant financials from a rent roll, but tenant happiness from a tenant experience side of things. Or how's my building actually operating? What's the information that's going into me making decisions should all be together. So let me give you a couple of examples in terms of how our current customers are utilizing Dottid and how they will ultimately get to utilize Dottid. Today we've got, as I said earlier, we've got a national client list, and the clients are it's really interesting. We've got a lot of our clients are like fully bought in and fully in, and all their brokers are on, and all of that's done well. You have some clients that we've got certain teams in, we've got certain property managers in. What we've really seen is that to get full buy-in, you have to get everybody trained, everybody on, and everybody using. And that's just like any technology. We face the same hurdles that every other product that's here and or not here faces as well. But one of our customers, Velocis, which is based out of Dallas, they're a Sunbelt office owner, kind of suburban office owner. They've really mandated Dottid across their entire teams, and not just asset management and leasing. We've gone through literally everybody in the organization touches Dottid or has visibility to Dottid. And that's done on purpose because from their perspective, they want all of the data to be known by everybody so that they're actually making critical business decisions as a unit and not just in different silos of the organization. What that's led to is incredible adoption. We see their users in our platform 3 to 4 days a week. We see business decisions that are happening much sooner than they used to happen. They've come to us and they've really thanked us for allowing them just to basically re-buy into the process of not just getting certain teams on, but getting their whole business bought into technology. And then I think one of the other things that we've seen as well is we've engaged a brokerage firm out of Dallas that's actually 2.5x or 3x their portfolio in the last 18 months, maybe 16 months. And because they've actually utilized Dottid and got all their buy-in, they haven't added a single broker. Now that should be telling, because in a very scarce talent pool that we're living in right now, with talent hard to come by, really good talent really hard to come by, they've actually leaned on our platform and not greater people from an overhead cost perspective to be the reason why they're growing. 2 quick anecdotes, but I think 2 anecdotes that ultimately lend themselves to why Dottid is being built the way it is and why we will continue to build the way that we are. Okay, so again, back to what's the future. Obviously, we've done the Argus announcement, and today, actually, we just announced a full national rollout with Lincoln Property Company. So LPC Ventures has just led our last round of funding, which is great. But we're really excited to see what can we also connect. And from a product roadmap perspective, how do we then connect and then take the data and form that into prescriptive data that is used by owners. So one of the things that we'll roll out next year is Dottid Insights. So Dottid Insights is taking disparate data from other platforms, I know we got a shout out earlier from Realty Ads, Trevor Marticky on stage earlier, but it'll take disparate data from other platforms and data that we can then aggregate in Tool, and then we get to push back out to owners. And we don't see this as like a separate add-on. Like this isn't, Dottid doesn't see this as like a modular cost thing where we charge you here, and then we charge you here, and then we charge you here, and then we actually get you 7 times over here. We see this as all part of the core product because it's part of solving the same core problem. And that's where I think Dottid really gets to become fun, unique, and different. Our data is going to be really unique. Obviously, we're going to be the only group that has Argus data. That's going to be very unique. And then as we continue to pull in other partners, we're going to be able to synchronize that data and make it more valuable to our owners. So, hope you get a little taste of why this industry kind of has a really bright outlook, frankly, because I do think there is just a different level of collaboration right now, and I think there's a different level of collaboration that's going to happen moving forward. And Dottid is really trying to ultimately push out the boundaries of, hey, we're not just going to operate in our silo, we're not going to operate in just what we do, but we are ultimately going to bring partners together, synchronize what they do with us, and then push out to make the greater good of the owner market as successful as humanly possible. That's it. That's all I got. Would love to answer any questions.
All right, thank you so much, Kyle. So we do have one audience question. As a reminder, if you want to submit one through the Swap Card app, you can. Otherwise, Kyle, you can just call on people afterwards.
Sure.
So the first question from O'Day is, do you integrate with Yardi?
We integrate with Yardi. Does anybody actually integrate with Yardi? I think that's a better question. I think there's one thing to integrate. I think there's another thing to become a partner of Yardi. We do not have a full integration with Yardi. I think there's some interesting conversations going on to that extent, but we don't have a full integration with Yardi. But we do, obviously, we do track accounting data through Dottid and make that seamless in terms of implementation and onboarding for our users.
Great. Over to you. Anyone else have any questions?
Other questions? What comes after Argus? Probably tenant experience and building operations. I think we're looking to do MRI Q1. We're excited about that, so that should be done end of Q1. And then, yeah, I think building operations and tenant experience are really high on our value chain in terms of the bigger systems, bigger tools that are in play. Yeah, so we'll see. But the Argus integration, you can imagine, it's like moving an aircraft carrier. But it's also helpful when you've got the right people on their team that are directing the aircraft carrier are the leads. We've got the right people, which is nice. So, what else? Go for it.
What do you see as the biggest challenge for the industry regarding, where you want to take Dottid? Where are the headwinds?
Yeah, numerous. I think the headwinds are decades and decades of siloed information. People always doing the same thing that they've always done, being unwilling to change. We see this with broker adoption or adoption on our platform. It's like, oh, I learned this one tool 3 years ago, so now I'm never going to learn another tool. Or I've always done things in Excel, so I'm never going to switch out of Excel. I mean, the headwinds are right in front of us. What I don't see that is actually different than probably 3 years ago when I first really started this thing is there's a much greater appetite to integrate. I mean, the fact that Altus approached us was really telling. We didn't approach Altus. Altus came to us. And that was really telling to us because that showed me in market that if you can get the big boys to start wanting to integrate, then you've got a whole different ballgame that you're playing from. I mean, yes, Realty Ads or Dottid or HQO or Equium or whomever else, the smaller, the newer players that have more nimble technology obviously are going to be more willing to ultimately integrate and do things together. The legacy players drive this space in a lot of ways, and so when Altus came to us, we were really, really thrilled about it. Anything else? Sure.
Do you have any integration with like work orders, tenant work orders? Is that going to be part of the tenant experience?
Yeah, that'll be part of all tenant experience. So yeah, we're not. I mean, Dottid's set up currently to solve commercial leasing, and so as we go into greater tenant experience building operations, that's why that's so high on our list, is because again, we don't want to just be about the tenant from a rent roll perspective. Like, tenants should be hopefully engaged in technology themselves, whether that's technology that owners are rolling out, through apps or whatever, but owners should know about their tenants in other ways than just what they're paying.
And their buildings in other ways, like for maintenance,
You got it.
where the problems are,
Yeah,
how it's
exactly. And so that's why we see that as a big opportunity, and I'm pretty confident by the end of 2022, our ecosystem of partners and who we are working with will be vast. Other questions? Great.
All right.
Thank you.
Give a big round of applause for Kyle. All right.